Frequency, Chapter 5, Part 2. Flash set the loaf of bread on the table. Who was that? Vinyl considered the question, staring at the radio as she pondered just how to describe Addie.
She's a friend.
She turned to him.
So, what's the deal with this promise you claim you made?
That came with a blush and a head rub. Well, I don't know if you're gonna want to hold me to it. I mean, you were totally smashed, and I felt so bad.
Bad?
She cocked her head.
Come on! I'm a happy drunk. I have dozens of witnesses to prove it.
You weren't happy when I brought you home, he replied with renewed seriousness. I promised to come here next time I was in town and we could talk. Though it strained her admittedly feeble brain, Vinyl tried to recall the night in question.
Talk about what?
He shrugged. I don't know, just talk. Her hoof waved over the loaf of bread on the table.
Over toast?
Something like that. He chuckled. I was hoping it would jog your memory. Vinyl whacked her hoof against the side of her head a couple of times.
Sorry, it's too empty and lazy for jogging. If you listen closely, you might hear the echo. Here.
She leaned forward, turning her head sideways and knocked a couple more times.
See if you can hear it.
I'll pass, thanks. They shared a grin, but then he patted the bread. Like I said, this was really just a hopeful play to make you remember. I was thinking we could have a late lunch together or something. She looked to the bread, then raised an eyebrow his way.
Are you asking me out on a date?
Though the change was subtle, there was no mistaking how Flash's entire body grew rigid. His eyes widened just slightly, and his wings tensed. No, I was just trying to be nice and keep my promise. I mean, I did make a promise, and you did say you'd like me to keep it, but I mean, you were drunk, you know, so maybe this was a bad idea, and I should... His mouth slowed down, almost as if it were succumbing to paralysis. However, his eyes were darting wildly about, perhaps in search of an escape route. Vinyl couldn't help giggling. She pressed his jaw closed with a huff.
Breathe, soldier.
He did as he was told, sucking in a deep breath and relaxing. Thanks. Grinning, she knuckled his head.
I like you both, but you're fun to torment. Where you want to eat?
Flash blinked, his feathers ruffling. You mean you actually want to go?
As a wise mare once said.
Vinyl raised her hoof in a stately pose.
Sharing food with another pony is an intimate act that should not be indulged in lightly.
There was a pause as Flash stared at her raised hoof. His eyes went cross, then he shook his head. And that means what, exactly? She shrugged with a grin.
How should I know? I read it on the back of a book in a bathroom stall.
Catching his hoof in her own, she made for the door.
Come on, Butt, you're buying.
Vinyl pulled her sunglasses back, set them atop her horn, and took in the ornate surroundings. Lacquered wood banisters on broad balconies, marble columns, waitstaff with ties and cuffs on their hooves, and a stone floor polished so perfectly she could see her own reflection. Her ears lowered and her tail tucked between her legs, as Flash spoke to the host behind a solid wooden podium. Come on, Vinyl. She followed close behind him, her eyes roaming to the other guests, all of whom sported flashy clothing, perfectly styled manes, and upturned muzzles. Raising hers to his ear, she asked,
What the heck kind of place is this?
He glanced back at her, face marred by cluelessness. What, you don't like Cibolian?
It's not that.
Her mouth clamped shut, and she forced a smile at the waiter as he invited them to sit at a booth against the wall. She all but sank under the table. Flash ordered a drink, and when Vinyl failed to respond to the waiter's query, he also ordered one for her. As soon as the waiter had gone, he leaned forward with ears perked and eyebrows raised. Vinyl, what's wrong?
What do you mean, what's wrong?
There were so many guests. She felt so blatantly visible, despite the fact that no ponies seemed to be paying them any mind.
This isn't exactly what I was expecting when you offered to buy me a late lunch.
He scratched behind his ear with a perplexed frown. I don't understand. At last, Vinyl sat up properly so she could give him a glower. Before she could say anything, though, his wing reached over the table and took the sunglasses from her head. setting them on the table. After a moment of staring, she pointed at the glasses with an eyebrow raised in his direction. It's considered rude here. Vinyl face-oved.
This is exactly what I'm worried about. I don't belong in a place like this, Bultbot.
It's just a restaurant, he replied, waving for her to keep her voice down. She needed no extra prodding, her eyes once again casting over the scenery.
It's not just a restaurant, it's a high-end restaurant.
She shook her head frantically.
Not only can I not afford this place, it's obvious to every pony here that I can't afford this place. I'm a lower-level pony.
It's not high-end, and I don't see what the big deal is. Hooves moving with the ease of practice, he began unfolding his napkin, setting the silverware down in a specific order as he did. I've been eating at places like this all my life. She blinked and took a closer look at him.
Are you rich or something?
Rich. He chuckled. I'm middle class. Also, I'm one of Princess Cadence's personal guards, which means good pay. And I'm alone. No family to spend money on, which means the bits pile up.
Must be nice.
She grumbled, ears lowering once more as she took a look at the menu. The names of all the entrees were written in some fancy mumbo-jumbo spelling, and it took her 3 to 4 reads to figure out what each item actually was.
Goddess, I feel like trash.
Do you want to leave?
No.
She shook her head frantically, forgetting that it was hidden behind her menu.
I said you could pick the place and I ain't backing down.
She noted the price tag on the appetizers and wilted.
I just can't believe you're spending this much money on me.
He sighed and reached across the table to unfold her napkin and set her silverware, for which she was very grateful. I'm sorry. I picked poorly, didn't I? Vinyl felt, or hoped, she had found something she might like. Dropping the menu, she tried her best to look as proper as she could.
Not to get you jumpy again, bro, but are you sure you're not trying to impress me like it's a date or something?
He chuckled and made a show of appearing confidence, though there was a touch of pink in his cheeks. Positive. Honest. This is just a regular restaurant to me. If I wanted to wow you, we'd be going somewhere with an actual dress code. Vinyl whimpered and stared at her hooves. The waiter returned with a glass for each of them. Vinyl eyed hers. It was a tall wine glass with something purple and bubbly inside. A sniff brought to her attention was a strong aroma that reminded her of plums. Taking the glass in her magic, she carefully sipped the beverage. It had a taste as strong as the smell, but it wasn't bad at all. She noted the slightest touch of alcohol beneath the fruity flavors. The waiter took their orders, Vinyl wincing with the understanding that she'd butchered the pronunciation of her meal. The stallion took the slip in stride, though, and was soon off with her menus. Seconds passed in silence, Vinyl staring at her hooves and wishing she could sink into the cushions. With her electric blue mane, red eyes, and lack of any clothing, she had to be the most eye-drawing pony in the room. For a mare with a reputation for trying to stand out, she sure wasn't enjoying the opportunity. So? Flash leaned over the table. Let's talk. She fidgeted and couldn't meet his eyes.
About what?
About whatever. He gestured invitingly and smiled. I'm here to listen.
Okay.
She thought for a while, tapping her hooves together and trying not to look around the room for judging eyes. At last, something came to mind.
Why are you in Canterlot?
Oh, making this about me, huh? Flash leaned back and rubbed his chest with a self-satisfied smile. I understand. Who doesn't want to know about me? He met her raised eyebrow with a smug grin.
Just answer the question, Boltbutt.
That was countered only with a chuckle and a sip of his drink. Princess Cadence is to meet with the ambassadors from the Diamond Dog tribes and the Minotaur Kingdom for trade negotiations. They insisted on doing it in a neutral location, but not in the Crystal Empire for reasons I don't get. She was able to talk them into having them here.
Huh.
Vina leaned against the table to peer at him.
So you'll be in town for how long?
10 days.
10 days.
She grabbed her glass and took a sip.
Does that mean you're gonna bother me every day for the next week?
He scoffed. I do have a job, you know. I'll be sticking to the princess's side most of the time. A smile slipped over the glass.
One of those eternally young, easy on the eye princesses, right?
Hey, low blow. Red colored his cheeks, his eyes darting about the room. I'm over Princess Twilight. She smirked.
Yeah, sounds like it.
His eyes narrowed. And what about you? Still laying in your bed at night wishing you had some pony to talk to? A shard of ice lodged in her chest, and her stomach seemed to drop in her hooves. Vinyl stared at him, her lip trembling and her hooves shaking.
How did you—
Ponies tell certain truths when they're inebriated. Hooves crossed and eyes hard, he kept up the pressure. Why do you think I'm here, Vinyl?
Because you— well—
She set her drink down and fidgeted, eyes once again going to her hooves.
I have no idea. I wasn't sure if you were just being friendly, or maybe trying to impress me.
He leaned forward once more, tilting his head in an attempt to look her in the eye. She carefully avoided his gaze. I'm here because I thought you would like some company for a change. I think you're lonely. So am I. A scowl took over her features as her head turned away.
What, we'll spend time together, fall in love, and then we won't be lonely anymore?
He sighed and sat back. You've got a serrated tongue, you know that?
What do you want me to say?
That's just it, Vinyl. He groaned. It's not about what I want. That night you told me you were tired of being alone, I promised you solemnly that I would help with that.
I was drunk.
She grumbled, grabbing her glass and taking a long sip.
You shouldn't have taken me so seriously.
Look, I strongly believe that we are at our most honest when we've had a few drinks on us, and you had more than a few that night. He was at last able to lock eyes with her. Come on. Stop hiding behind the tough mask.
Well, aren't you my knight in shining armor?
She took a wicked bit of pleasure in his wince.
If I wanted help, I'd have asked for it.
You did. Her eyebrow twitched. She glanced at the glass in her magic and slowly set it down.
I'm never getting drunk around you again. Fine, you got me. I was lonely.
He cocked his head. Was?
That's right.
Now it was her turn to lean forward and peer at him.
I've got a friend now. We talk regularly.
He thought on this for a moment. Was it that pony on the radio?
Yeah, she's the one.
Vinyl forced a broad smile to her lips.
We've been at it for a couple of weeks now. The girl's crazy.
Flash stared at her, his lips pursed and his ears low. She could see he had a question on the tip of his tongue, knew that he was almost desperate to call her bluff. However, in the end, he just smiled and nodded. Is it the good kind of crazy? Vinyl relaxed, but she lost her smile.
I don't think so.
Off went the smile. He shifted, forehead furrowing. What? Yeah, Flash has a crush on her. There's no way that he doesn't. Anywho, let's get on to our good-looking donators. Top donators are 630, BadassWaffle, Only One Thing, Ceru, Orion, IronSky, and Jessie Smith. Magic109, JockeTF, Darkside, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Rollins, 2 Hex, Sword, Mordred, Omicron, Library, Runeslab 9852, Will, Chris, Wiki, Rysel, Shadow Moon, Luigi 88, Chancer Crust, Pixmonk 369, Bobcat, GGF, Murder Princess, and many more fantastic people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.